This episode is sponsored by the Home Inspector team. It seems like everywhere you look nowadays, you see new homes popping up all over the place like dandelions in the spring. You have to wonder how well those homes are being built with how fast they're building them. That's where the Home Inspector team comes in. With their new construction bundle, you can have every phase of your new construction home professionally inspected to make sure no mistakes are being made. First, they come out before the drywall is installed to make sure the construction and utility rough-ins are done properly, because once they are out of sight, they are out of mind. Before you move in, they ensure everything is functioning properly and provide essential information to help you maintain the home, safeguarding your family and your investment. And finally, just before the builder's warranty expires, they come in to make sure that everything is A-OK, and if it's not, they make sharing your inspection report with the builder a breeze. Scheduling an appointment with the Home Inspector team is super easy. I just did it myself. Just visit their website, thehomeinspector.team, to get an instant quote and to schedule the inspection at a time that works best for you. And don't forget to mention our podcast to receive a special discount. Now back to the show. She has been captivating audiences for years with her wit and charm, straight from the networking floor to give you all the dirt. It's Dusta. Hi, y'all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt, the show where we dive deep into the journey of entrepreneurship with the people who took the plunge and the ups and downs that come with it. I'm your host, Dusta. Thank you for joining me today. Today we have Jennifer Smith with the Doyle Law Group, and we're going to talk today a little bit about divorce and family law.
That's right.
Yes. All right. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the Doyle Law Group and things that you do.
So I grew up in Zebulon, North Carolina. Went to North Carolina State undergraduate. Graduated in '98. Took a 2-year break and was a paralegal for the Mass Law Firm in Smith-Doyle, where they encouraged me to apply to law school, and ended up going to North Carolina Central. Graduated in 2003 and ended up in Asheville for a few years practicing. Actually got divorced myself. Ended up back home, and so I've been in Wake County practicing since 2006. And I've been with Glenn at the Doyle Law Group originally since 2013 with a brief hiatus somewhere else. And now I came back to Glenn, so I've been there over a year now.
That's an amazing story. I love that.
Yes, I've bounced around a lot.
Tell us what the Doyle Law Group does. Tell what they focus on.
So we are exclusively family law. We handle cases, custody, child support, spousal support, equitable distribution. We also do alienation of affection and criminal conversation cases, which most folks probably think about that more so as suing the paramour or someone that has cheated with a married person. So those can be spicy sometimes, and not everybody handles those, but we do.
And that is something that is exclusive to North Carolina?
I think they're down to like 3 states who recognize it, but yeah, one of us. It's very rare.
Yes. I'm from Florida, so we didn't really have that there. So when I came here, I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It is very interesting.
There's a lot of interesting laws here that I've never heard of, and I'm like, oh, okay.
North Carolina is quirky, for sure.
They have some weird laws, like on Sundays you can't spit on the sidewalk or something, I've heard, and I'm like, okay.
I have no doubt. We had a whole separate North Carolina gigantic book to study for the bar that was just nothing but North Carolina exceptions. So
that's interesting.
We're very unique in our laws. For
Absolutely.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
So you had to go to school. Tell us about your education journey.
So I graduated from state. I had a degree in sociology and ended up being a paralegal. And in the middle of sort of learning on the job, they encouraged me to go to the Meredith Paralegal Program. And so I've completed that, and that was sort of the shift from paralegal to attorney. Because in one of my classes, basically they were saying the difference between an attorney and a paralegal is quote a fee, give legal advice, appear in court, and that's it. And I was like, well, maybe I need to revisit going. Yeah, I had applied before and didn't get in, so I was reluctant to do it. But then I got encouraged by my friends at work, and I did it and got in the second time, so it worked out.
Hey, sometimes you need that, I'll call it a pause, and
Yes.
then you can move forward. That happened to me too. I went to school for medical office administration. I got my medical billing and coding degree certificate, got a job, and 2 weeks later decided the same for me. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I fell into entrepreneurship for the second time. I guess I should have learned the first time.
We all have bumps in the road. I mean, when I think about it now, looking back, 20-some years, I think it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because I was not in a good place like myself, feeling, sure enough to go do it. So I needed that time to learn and grow.
No, absolutely. I do feel that the older we get, the more confident we get in our desires and what we feel like we're good at. So taking that pause and being like, this is redirection. I'm going to call it a redirection.
Right. Yes.
Because I ended up in entrepreneurship about 4 years ago because I thought, well, this was during the pandemic. So the pandemic hits, I fill out all my paperwork to start a business, but I simultaneously had a job at Walmart because you need to make sure you have a stable income.
Right.
So I do that, and then this shutdown happened, and I was like, well, I'm not really sure where we're going to go from here. But I made it work after I got my stimulus check, and here I am, still doing it. So I feel like that was my confidence and my encouragement to move forward.
Right. Good for you.
So it was very awesome. So tell us about where you see yourself in the future.
Where I see myself in the future, pretty sure I'm still going to be practicing law. I've taken a class to get certified as a parenting coordinator, which is a individual that kind of helps parties co-parent and work through issues. And so I have thought about stepping into that some, and maybe stepping some back from taking cases, but I don't think I'm quite ready to do that yet. I feel like there's such a need for people to have good representation, and I want to make sure that I'm doing that as long as I can, and I want to focus on that for now.
No, absolutely. Myself divorced, so I understand. Definitely, I feel like your outcome is definitely correlated with who you have represent you.
Correct.
So, what is your current marketing strategy that you use to get in clients? Because obviously everyone gets divorced every day. I personally see a lot of it going on in the Clayton moms groups, just moms groups in general.
Right.
So who's your biggest referral partner, I guess I should ask?
I know Glenn, we do a lot of marketing, the Google searches and all that stuff. And then I like to reach out to people on Facebook and post things so that's more organic and people kind of get to know me as a person and how I practice. So I've gotten a lot of referrals just from, Facebook friends. And then after the pandemic, I decided that I needed to get out and network and get out of my shell. I'm introverted, so I'm not a, very big people person. So I finally was just like, you're just going to have to be a big girl and do it. And so I went to the Glow Luncheon in Garner, and that's where I met Victoria, which you always say an extroverted person kind of adopts an introverted person and brings them. That's how I got into Tang. So now I'm trying to do more in-person networking, just to not only have people refer folks to me, but also learn about good people that I can refer people to, particularly my clients.
Absolutely, and that's why I brought that up, is because as a person who was going through divorce, you need sometimes a real estate agent, a home inspector, different things so that you can settle your stuff and then move on.
That's right. It touches a lot of different areas. You think about estate planning, selling houses, getting the house ready to sell, repairs. I mean, every little things pop up here and there, and they ask me, who I would recommend. I want to make sure that somebody's going to take care of them as well as I take care of my clients. So it's just been really helpful getting out in Tang and meeting some wonderful people that I can refer folks to.
No, absolutely. I love to be well connected myself. Even though I just house clean, I get asked all the time for different things. So I do know an amazing divorce attorney, and I can tell them, hey, here you go.
That's right.
So I love that. So tell us about a really good networking tip that you've learned so far. I know you said you're introverted, so how do you get out there and talk to people?
I started out with my tip of the day, as far as like a divorce tip or just something to remember or something to be aware of, and I think that kind of makes it a little easier to talk about versus
like an olive branch.
Right, because I don't like talking about myself. Like, I feel kind of awkward about it, but I love to talk about family law in the sense of what you can do to protect yourself or what you should be aware of. So I think doing something makes it feel natural. Like, that's the thing. It needs to be organic when you're interacting and networking.
No, I agree 100%. I think that connections need to be made based on, olive branches, but also connections to the person.
Right.
Because they always grab onto the things that resonate with them.
Yes, they do.
So I've noticed that. I'm one of those people, and I like to talk a lot, clearly. So tell us about... Sorry, I had to take a pause. I had to breathe for a second. My lupus is acting up. Tell us about a day in the life of, like, what you're, as a divorce attorney, or a family law, attorney, what does it look like?
It can vary day to day. You never really know what's on the agenda. Like, I can pretend to make a to-do list and have a calendar, but it's really fires every day. So, for example, Tuesday, went into work, 9 o'clock, found out I had a emergency custody filing against a client. I had to drop everything, draft the response, get it filed, get it served, and then on top of that, I have appointments to keep, and it's a lot of juggling. On top of handling client calls, doing the drafting and things you need to do that you'd already planned on doing. You have to multitask big time to keep it all going, and making sure the key to family law is communication and staying in communication with your clients. So having to be cognizant of, I got sidetracked really bad today, let me email so and so and say, hey, I got sidetracked, you're on my mind, I'll be in touch tomorrow, or something like that. So it's really from day to day. Some days I could be sitting and just emailing all day long to people, and some days I'm just drafting half the day, and then you'll get these calls and you just have to jump at the ready and just dig in and deal with it.
No, understand. I feel like that's a lot of people, entrepreneurship, attorneys, we all have a lot of that in common, juggling.
Yes.
So what do you do for self-care, and how do you balance that and not bring it home with you?
That is difficult, and that's something I've struggled with and have been in therapy to deal with, because I do, I had a lot of anxiety and depression about it. Now that I'm older, I see more so the importance of leaving it at work. I can care about my clients, but also take care of myself. And that's something it's not either or. And that's something that I've learned, in my 40s now. So I have to take care of me to be the best attorney for them.
Absolutely.
And so I don't run myself ragged to death like I used to. So I try to exercise, walking, doing some running, reading. I love cooking, different things like that. So I try to go home and sort of decompress in some way.
So what's your favorite dish to cook?
Probably spaghetti sauce. I love my mama's spaghetti sauce. That's my favorite thing to cook. I love all the comfort foods.
I love it. We've been, my daughter and I, she's half Italian. And obviously, I'm not. So my spaghetti sauce comes out of a jar. So we're looking for ideas and recipes for some authentic Italian cuisine. So tell us about your support system. Who is or was your biggest supporter? And how has having that support helped you achieve your success?
It's funny, I would say my work family, Mass Law Firm, I cannot express how I probably would have not be sitting here having been a specialist in family law if I hadn't been a paralegal for them and gotten the bump to take that step and be brave and try again. So that was a lot of support. And then my mom and my sister, having family to help. But I will say, finding a good work environment and having a good boss, it's just, this is just so valuable.
Absolutely. And family.
Yes.
I agree with that. I have a good support system with my family as well, so I get it. So, who's your biggest inspiration?
When I was in high school, my goal was to be on Oprah. I wanted to be one of those experts, sort of like Dr. Phil McGraw. Yes. You remember he was on there on Tuesdays? That was my favorite day. And so yeah, that was in high school. The newspaper said, Jen on Oprah, stay tuned. So I've always loved Oprah.
She's amazing.
She's helped so many people, and I just love her, breadth of experience. So I think she's probably been my inspiration for a long time.
I love that you went big, because I do the same thing, and it's crazy, but Kris Jenner, I love her to death as a businesswoman. She has been very, like, fruitful and tactical, and she's got herself in such a great position to where she's managing these children of hers and just taking her little cut and getting just everything she wants out of life, if we're being honest. Like, I love her house. I love the fact that she has a martini lady. She just have to have her drink every day. So that's great. If I'm thinking smaller, wow, that's a good question for myself even. A smaller business owner. There's so many of them that I know. If those noises you guys are hearing are from our sponsor, the home inspector team, we decided that we needed to get our home inspected because it's been 5 years since our first inspection and our only inspection, and you need to get it done every year just to make sure that you stay on top of things. So those little noises are them making sure that my house is awesome. So we're going to be looking forward to that report after. I'm going to share some of that with you guys. All right. So what advice was most impactful, and what advice would you give someone who's like wanting to become an attorney? Because I know that there are different specialties. So A, how did you choose family law? And B, like, what would your advice be for anyone to kind of try the different branches out?
I definitely would suggest getting a job in a law office first, just to see if you like the dynamic of it. Because I actually started out as a personal injury paralegal on the plaintiff side, and so basically I was, organizing and grabbing medical records and, drafting demand letters and things. And I was kind of lukewarm about it. You kind of just sort of like, it's okay. But family law, on the other hand, because I thought, that's so cool. It's so interesting. Like, every day it's something different. And back when I was in law school, they would go, they only had one day of domestic court in Johnston County on Tuesdays.
They only do now.
Really?
Yeah.
Still? Well, that was the day. And it was just like, I loved going. I would go. I was a clerk for Christy Stem, and it was just like the best thing ever. I thought it was the coolest thing, listening to, everybody testify and what's going on, and just learned so much. And in fact, that's when I realized myself I was in an abusive relationship, because, back when I was younger, I thought, oh, it's a broken bone, it's a black eye, that's domestic violence, but absolutely not. It's mental and physical. And I heard a lady... And financial. I heard a lady testifying, getting a restraining order, and it was like something I had happen to me all the time. And it was just like a wake-up call that I had to take care of that and leave that relationship.
Do you mind if we talk about it a little bit? Not what happened, but just in general, domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
I went and saw It Ends With Us yesterday. I'm going to cry a little bit. Very triggering.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the same situation. So, can you tell everybody, like, what they should do in this situation? Like, you mentioned a domestic violence. Is there any way to protect themselves or to get out of it, or...?
There are resources in Johnston and Wake counties. For example, like Interactive Wake County is a domestic violence resource that you can contact them, and they can actually help you prepare the domestic violence paperwork, connect you with Legal Aid of North Carolina. You can get your free representation. And I believe Harbor is the similar agency in Johnston. So, it's one of those things. It's like a head and a heart decision. Especially if you grew up in an environment where there was just yelling and screaming all the time anyway, and you just think it's normal. And then I think things happen. Like, I had to hear that lady telling her story to realize what I was really going through. Like, it's not normal. And so a lot of times when people come and talk to me and tell me their stories, I have to remind them, like, that's not normal, right? You shouldn't be talked to that way. You shouldn't have to beg for $5.
I feel that 100%.
Yeah.
I grew up in domestic violence, and the cops going to my house after dinner just to separate my parents and all that fun stuff, and I didn't know that it wasn't normal.
Yeah, people grow up that way. I mean, my, dad would throw stuff and call us names and things, and it did not dawn on me that was abnormal.
No, 100% same. Or my mother used to go into the kitchen and take the dishes, chuck them at my dad. I'm like, that is not normal to have different plates that don't match all the time from Goodwill.
That is correct. I know.
So it took me like 34 years to realize, like, this is not okay. And so this is personal experience. I went down to the Harbor house and I ended up getting the restraining order. But one thing I always like to highlight, and my mother was a paralegal, same as you, is document everything.
Document everything is 100%. You have to just be in the know of everything. Even if you have a perfect marriage and like you have no troubles on the horizon, don't be naive about, what's in the bank. What retirement accounts do you all have? I mean, there's nothing wrong with opening up those statements and looking at them. Even if you don't like financial stuff, I don't really like financial stuff in my personal life, but you need that knowledge. You need to know what's going on and where things are.
And preface this with this is general advice, not legal advice.
That's right. General information, no legal advice, but definitely you need to be in touch with what your finances are and debts as well. I've had people back in the day where, back when it was constantly getting credit cards pre-approved, forging signatures, and find out when they're getting divorced that they had a credit card debt that had no idea even existed. So my other tip is to get your credit report and look at it. You can get one free through the government every year.
At annualcreditreport.com.
Yes.
Big proponent of that as well, making sure that you're always keeping things in check. And like you said, you don't know it's not normal until you share your story. So that's actually kind of when I started realizing that these things aren't normal, is when I would talk to other people. I'm like, oh, you don't experience this? That's interesting.
Right.
So talk to people. Somebody once said that if you share your pain, it gets cut in half, but if you share your joy, it doubles.
I can see that for sure. Yes.
So make sure that you're, in communication. Don't live in isolation. That's another thing that happened to me as well. Not having any friends or family around.
Yeah, when they start just alienating everyone, something's wrong with everybody.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite.
Something's always something wrong with somebody. Or, if you did X, Y, Z, I wouldn't get mad at you. Which is what I told myself when I was in that relationship was, well, if I was just the perfect wife, if I got up every morning and made breakfast before law school, it would be perfect. No, it's not. And
I once spoke to a therapist that told me that marriage is never going to be 50-50. It's going to be 60-40, 70-30. It just depends on the day. So making sure that, your relationship isn't 100% on you.
Correct. I mean, that's where that gets lost too, I think, now as I'm older and talking to people. Just because you're a stay-at-home mom and, quote, not bringing in the money doesn't mean that's not your money. Because that's what I hear a lot. That's my money. That's my retirement. That's me working. You don't get any of that. Sir, she does. Earned during the marriage, it's equitable distribution. Even if she doesn't have any kind of paycheck to show. What people do in the home is valuable, be it man or woman, because times are changing. I've got some stay-at-home dads now. And, I would tell them too, if you have someone that's contributing to a retirement account through work and you're at home, get you a Roth IRA or something and start putting some money in it. Even if it's $50 a month or whatever, just do it. Have something in your own name just to give you a little bit of autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that's when it starts to blur the lines, is when you aren't in charge of your own decisions anymore and you don't have your own anything.
Right.
Bank account, car, whatever it is.
Yeah, because people are valuable, no matter what. You get a paycheck or not, whatever you do in the house, you're valuable, and so you need to be treated with respect and have that autonomy.
No, absolutely. I believe that 100%. I don't date because I'm good on all that. I finally got to a place where I'm like, I have my own business, I have my own house, I have my own car. Like, I don't really need anything else, and I love that. For me.
Yeah.
I was going to preface that. For me. So, I always talk about entrepreneurship on here, but I love that I brought you on because I wanted to kind of give a perspective of, if, say, you own a business and you are contemplating divorce, what are some things that someone would want to do in order to make sure that we don't have many issues when it comes to the divorce and equitable distribution?
Definitely you have your documents organized. The worst thing you can do is have a business and then you're getting divorced and then everybody's like, okay, well, where are your, bank statements, where, your P&Ls and all this? And it's like, I don't know. I don't have anything. Here is a bag that's full of a bunch of random stuff that I'm just going to give to you to deal with.
I feel called out.
That is not good. Really, the more organized you can be with your paperwork, the better. And I would also say, if you were thinking about getting married and already own a business, that's the perfect reason to get a prenuptial agreement, just to go ahead and deal with it. So that, for example, if you have a family business and it's been around for 30 years, you get divorced later, you can exclude any of that business growth or anything like that as being part of the marital estate. If you don't do that, then any kind of growth or active contribution that occurs during the marriage could be considered marital and up for division in equitable distribution.
So making sure that you safeguard yourself and your business.
Right. Or, with retirement, same thing. If, you can exclude that as marital for contributing during the marriage. But if someone had a retirement account they'd have 20 years before the marriage, and then they're married another 20 and deposited funds in that account during that marriage, that part that they contributed is marital and subject to division. So you have to really think about that too.
So maybe coming to see you, both of them, or separately before they get married to kind of go over everything?
Yeah, we can only meet with one person.
I didn't know that, so I wanted to share that information.
Yeah, we can only meet with one person. Mediators can help folks settle their cases, like kind of amongst themselves. They don't really represent one or the other. But as far as divorce attorneys, we can't represent two people.
Okay, so if they have you on retainer, or you've seen them, then they have to move on to someone else.
Right.
No. Good to know. Did not know that. Mm-hmm. My divorce was uncontested, so I didn't have that issue.
You were lucky.
I feel incredibly lucky because of that. He took off and abandoned us, so I was like, cool, I'll just file and do everything I need to do here. He ain't gonna show up, and he didn't.
That's awesome.
So I ended up favoring in that. And I always like to share my story with people too, because I do have a different situation than a lot of other folks. Since he was no fighting on me and he abandoned everything, we did a Rule 70 judgment, so which was new to my attorney at the time. So being able to kind of go through that process was a lot different than I would say an equitable distribution with someone standing there,
right,
not arguing, what's the word I'm looking for, fighting for you with it.
Yeah, right.
So totally understand that. So, is there any advice that you'd like to give any entrepreneur who's wanting to start a business in general? Like, I know you focus on family law, but making sure that they have contracts, things of that nature, in order to insurance.
I would definitely say look at the entity you're creating, because you need to make sure you insulate yourself from any kind of potential liability. Like just being a solo proprietor doesn't have the same protections that being like an LLC or an S corp would have, and as far as taxes and liability. And so I would say go to someone and get the information on what's the best thing for your particular situation. Start there and make sure that you have your business set up in the appropriate entity, and then kind of go from there.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And if you have a business partner, making sure that you have an agreement that's laid out so that if something happens to either one of you or you disagree, that you know what's going to happen.
100%. Everything needs to be in writing.
Yes. My mother used to tell me that she was a paralegal. She started out doing personal injury attorney stuff, and then she went to real estate. So she has a little bit of both of those backgrounds, and she would always tell me, like, never put anything in writing that you don't want a judge to ask you about.
Exactly. I tell folks all the time. If I can't slap an exhibit sticker on it, you don't need to be sending it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something that I dealt with in my divorce, is that he loved to go on the internet and tell people how he felt that I should be unalived and all of these wonderful things. So advice that I had gotten was to not, well, obviously I wouldn't do that, but don't put it on Facebook. Don't put it on the internet.
Yes, that is probably one of the worst things people can do, is put their stuff on Facebook, because you don't know who is looking. I cannot tell you how many times I have had people send me screenshots and things, and it's like, those people knew that the other side had that stuff, they would cringe.
Absolutely. My attorney, when I was going through all of this, I gave her his socials, and so she would have her paralegal monitor them, and he would say things that I wouldn't know about until she would message me and be like, oh, look at this, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So we ended up with a very thick 3-inch binder full of all the things he did wrong.
I have no doubt.
It was very interesting. I'm very open about it. It sucked. It happened. But if I don't share my story, how can I help someone else?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I try to be open with my story too. You know, as far as when I meet with folks and let them know, you know, I go to therapy, I take antidepressants, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have to stay on top of it. And so, you know, I want people to be comfortable with telling me what's really going on with their life so I can make sure that I give them the best representation possible.
Absolutely. And I also myself went to a therapist as soon as I was like, this is over. So I highly recommend therapy to everyone.
Me too. I mean, if you're separating, you probably should just go as just a matter of course. Just to do a check-in.
100%. Because mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yes.
I'm learning that. And I went to my doctor recently and she had mentioned that. And she was like, you know, if you don't take care of the mental health, the physical health, it doesn't matter. Because the mental health can affect the physical health.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. The more you know.
Mm-hmm.
Doing my little rainbow from back in the day, the more you know. You're very introverted. You listen. I'm noticing that I'm having to pull information out of you, and I love that. I think that makes a great personality trait for an attorney because I talk too much. Okay? And that's another thing I learned, too. If you're quiet and you sit there, people will tell you things you don't need to know, but you do. You know? Mm-hmm. They'll tell them themselves. So I love that, and I think that's great that you listen. You take the time to get all of the details of what's going on, and then you can form your thoughts better.
Right. I am a big listener. I like for people to tell me their stories, especially like with consults. As I've actually sat in on some attorneys who do consults, and it's like they talk the whole time, and the client doesn't really say much. And I'm like, how do you even know what's going on with the case if they won't tell you their story? So I'm real big on that.
I'm glad you mentioned that because something that just triggered in my brain when you said that is I interviewed 2 attorneys before I made my decision on who I was going to go with for my divorce. And the first one I went in and she couldn't get my ex-husband's name correct. She kept calling him Michael. His name is Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, okay. And then she also told me to not file anything until he does. And I thought that's interesting because I have the paralegal background just from my mother. I took a few classes, and the reason why I decided personally not to do it is because I read in one of my college books, and it said in like the first chapter, it was like people who do this end up with drinking and drug problems because it's so heavy to have to deal with other people's family problems. And I was like, that's scary to me.
Right.
Because I will take on your energy. So I was like, ooh, let's back up on that one. So I took a few classes and I was like, I think I'm going to go for medical instead.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a little more, not black and white, but just less emotional.
Right. Yeah, this is something that you can get you can get compassion fatigue where you just get burnt out. It's, you know, because there's sometimes you just can't help people. Like, I can't wave a wand and fix things for people, and I wish I could, but it's just like sometimes we just don't have the resources, we don't have the laws to do what needs to be done. And I mean, that will beat on you after a while, so you have to...
Absolutely.
You know,
that's why I ask about yourself. Yeah, self-care, because you need to be able to balance the two. But circling back around, because my ADHD diversion here, interviewing. Do you have any really good interview questions that somebody should ask when they're seeking an attorney for divorce?
I would ask them about their billing practices. Make sure that you're getting a bill once a month because, you know, there's like a sort of a saying that attorneys a lot of times aren't great business people. And so, you know, there's such a big part of that with a law firm is, you know, the business side and is it getting handled, who's doing what. And I just know from personal just talking to people that a lot of times the billing can get just put aside, and so you have folks who don't get a bill for like 7 or 8 months and they're like, oh, this was great, and then you get this gigantic bill and it's like, oh, by the way, you owe me $6,000. And I know me personally, I would croak if I got that kind of a bill. And again, you know, people going through a divorce, they're not 100%. I mean, it's a grief process. So, you know, grief brings a real thing. I've experienced it with deaths and things like that. So I don't want to contribute to the stress of my clients. And they also need to keep up with what's going on. So you should get a bill once a month and look at it, make sure you understand it and what they're charging you for. And if you don't, ask them. You need to don't be shy about asking questions about a bill because our job is to make sure you understand. We shouldn't get defensive about it. You know, I always am open with people asking me if they don't understand something about the bill. That, and just, you really should, the communication is key. We do have crazy schedules. Sometimes I'm in court all day and can't respond, but if you reach out to your attorney, you need to hear something in like 2 or 3 days, even if it's just someone saying, I got your message. It just, I've heard horror stories of people saying, well, I haven't heard from him in weeks. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's scary, because a lot can happen, and, who is looking after what?
That's true.
Things move fast in family law. So I would just say, if, make sure that the communication is flowing, check your bills, make sure you're getting them on time. And, don't be scared to ask questions, because they're working for you, the client.
Absolutely. And ask them also, like, what's their success rate, too?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, too, because sometimes people are, like, we don't always get the great clients. Sometimes we're getting people with difficulties. So
true.
I may actually lose the hearing, but I got them a better result than what they would have got with no representation at all, or somebody else who wouldn't have worked the case as much. So it's I really think the question is, like, the attention they give your case, and are they treating you like a person or just a stack of bank statements? Because that's not what people are.
That's absolutely true, because like I said, I interviewed too, and I ultimately went with the second one because I felt that she had not as much experience as the other person, but I felt like she knew exactly what she was doing and what she was talking about when I brought attention to everything that was going on.
Right.
The first one was highly recommended to me by someone else who used her, but then I just didn't feel like that connection. I didn't think she understood what I was trying to do.
Right.
I felt like she was just like a number.
Sometimes people treat the consults like a sales pitch.
Yes.
And so you do need to be, and again, I think that goes back to who's doing most of the talking. If you're listening to an attorney talk at you and you never get to tell them what's really going on, I think that's a red flag.
I agree. Like I said, you've been sitting here listening and you're very intent, and it feels like you're, forming your opinions and understanding like what I'm saying to you, instead of just like that blank slate where you're like, okay, cool, fill this out, let's go.
Right.
And I think that's great. For me personally, I love connection. I've been told that if I can't connect with somebody, I have absolutely no interest in them, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I just have to have a connection with somebody, anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. It's great advice. Make sure you're doing your interviews and checking them out. And, that was the other thing, is whether or not they practice in your county.
That is huge. That is huge.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, that and how you'd find that out and stuff like that?
When you call an attorney, you need to, a lot of times people will say, oh, I practice in, X, Y, Z counties, but you need to make sure they regularly practice there. Like, for example, our firm practices, we litigate in Wake and Durham counties. We don't litigate in Johnston. So, some people say, oh, yeah, we litigate in Johnston County. Ask them who the current judges are. Make sure that they are familiar with who's on the bench, what's going on, because that's a specific dynamic that they need to be familiar with. Like, custody is a good example of it, because custody, the basic standard is best interest of the minor child. So that's basically a gut check of, who do I feel is most comfortable having this child, either equally or primarily, whatever the case may be. That's a personality thing. That's a fact thing. And so you have to know your judge and weigh the lean.
Absolutely.
Because if you walk in there with your custody case and they have no idea how things flow, they're doing you a disservice. So
Yes.
they need to regularly practice in the county.
I agree, because then they get to know, how everything works too, because they can't just be flying by the seat of their pants.
Right.
It looks unprofessional, and I don't think a judge would be okay with that.
No, that's right.
So making sure that presentation is everything.
It is. And, being prepared and knowing the case. Because there's a lot of people who, they're loud and boisterous and, love to make a scene. But when it comes down to the nooks and crannies and the details, they don't know them because they're not prepared. Because they're just going to go in and kind of like, dazzle the judge, get what they want. And, when you ask the hard questions, and then, their client is like, oh, I don't know. Somebody needs to know the ins and outs of your case.
Absolutely, and that's something that me and my attorney did going through the divorce. We sat down right before we went to in front of the judge, and she said, "Hey, we're going to ask you this. This is how you're supposed to respond, to let me know, because otherwise, ADHD, I'm going to go off in this whole different direction." So making sure that I focused on what she was asking me and I understood the question.
Yes.
So that was very important to me too.
Yes, and even just knowing how the courtrooms work. Like in Wake County, there's certain timelines, like for temporary custody, you only get an hour. For both sides, you get 30 minutes. Or no, it's 2 hours now. In Durham, it's 1. So you have to know, what county allows what for their local rules. Because if you don't, you can completely, mess your case up.
No, absolutely. So that's very valuable information. We're learning a lot together. I love this. I love sharing information. That's why I decided to do this podcast and make sure that anything I learn I can share with others, because again, if you don't share, how do you know? Same thing with the domestic violence. When you start telling stories about your childhood and people are like, that's not normal, you're like, oh, my parents used to call it dinner and a show.
Oh, yeah.
And the cops would show up. And then I lived in Florida. I should probably preface all that. So if it wasn't us, it was the neighbors.
Right.
So if they were getting fight, we were sitting out on the front porch eating food and watching them, and I'm like, this probably isn't normal.
And it's really wild how, you just get indoctrinated and you just think, oh, this is fine. And then, like I said, that something will happen and it'll bring to light, like, no, this is not normal.
No, absolutely not. It makes me giggle a little bit because I'm just like, man, how could I go so many years thinking that this is appropriate behavior? Like, because it led me into not 1 but 2 domestic violence relationships. I was 8 months pregnant with my second child, and he put me through a wall. And I got out of that wall, and I did call my dad at the time. My parents were separated for the 150th time, and I moved out while he was at work. I was like, absolutely not, and never looked back. And I thought, oh, I'll never do that again. Well, lo and behold, 10 years later, found myself in the same situation because I didn't know any better. And
I know.
Didn't get therapy at that time either.
Yeah, honestly, I've been divorced multiple times myself, and I was in and out of therapy. But when I was younger, I thought you went into therapy to be cured, and you would be perfect mental health, you would have the perfect self-esteem, it would be great. Well, that's not how it works. It's an ongoing process. It was probably not until 2017 or 2018, I went to Bar Cares, which is a service that they provide attorneys. They can get free mental health treatment for I forgot what the limit is, honestly, but you have to go talk to the lady first about what's going on so that they can figure out what to do. And so I was telling her my story, and she was like, has anybody ever told you you're codependent? And I was kind of like, codependent? I've heard that word, but I don't know what it means. And yeah, that was my huge issue that I wish I had known about years ago.
Yeah, I agree, because as a person who is codependent as well, but I didn't realize it was also because of the childhood abuse that I was dealing with as a kid.
Right.
So I say that once you turn 18, go to a therapist and do a check-in.
I agree. 100%.
And then, much like a house inspection once a year, therapy. Making sure that we're always checking in, even
yes,
if it's once a year at minimum.
We really need to take mental health more, it is a serious thing. And we do need to, physical, we have physicals once a year. We should have a mental health check once a year.
No, agreed. And especially when you're going through, a contentious divorce, I think it's very important, too.
Very, very.
Because it'll keep your head straight. Because there are some times when they want to fight back and kind of make you upset, and then they file something else, and then you're distraught and you can't function. And while the attorney does handle it, I'm saying that you physically are like, this is too much stress.
Yeah, it is, because it's, I have seen people when they will just shut down. It will get to the point where they won't even respond to me anymore. That's why, the ostrich syndrome. I'm like, oh, Lord. They're burying their head in the sand. We can't do that. We got litigation. So, you have to be cognizant of that. And I'll, let people know, hey, you should go talk to a therapist or go to a support group or something, because attorneys can't do all of that stuff. Calling and yelling at me about your, jerk husband just to complain. You don't want to do that. not for $3.85 an hour.
I was going to say, that's more expensive than a therapist.
Yes, go to a therapist for that. It'll definitely be more cost effective, and they're equipped to help you with it.
That's right.
Yes.
All right, so, any words of advice that you'd like to leave with the listeners today?
My words of advice is really just know what's going on in your life, in your financial life. You know, if something seems off, you know, explore it. You know, one of the things for a long time was, you know, the cell phones and the texting, and now everybody's on it all the time. But, you know, I've had people that they don't have the password to their spouse's phone, and I think that's a little odd. Unless you have like a legitimate work reason, like confidentiality, I just don't know why that should be an issue of somebody being so protective over their phone.
No, I agree 100%. I didn't have my ex-husband's passcode at all.
Yeah, and so there's just things like that. Again, like, you kind of get lulled into it being normal, but, you know, when you look on the outside in, like, you know, why would that be the case? You know?
Absolutely, because, you know, now it's like, well, I'm not dating anyone, I'm good and all that, but my daughter has it. You know, hey, check this text, hey, check that. So,
right.
You know, it's having, if you don't have that level of trust, I don't even understand why you're in a relationship, let's just be honest.
Exactly.
So, that's a red flag. So, making sure that we look out for red flags.
100%.
And whatever those may be within your relationship. Well, I just want to thank you for coming out today and telling everybody, you know, your story and sharing it. And I appreciate that. I'm glad that we got to bond on that level. I know it's like a trauma bond, and I'm trying not to do that, but
I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, I just want to like share the stories with people, and it can help someone.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm glad I got to share mine.
Well, thank you. And tell everybody where they can find you. Where's the Doyle Law Group?
We are on Strickland Road in North Raleigh. It's DoyleDivorceLaw.com. And the office number is 919-301-8843.
Awesome. Well, I will link that in with your podcast episode so everyone can connect with you and find you if they need you.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, and you guys have a great rest of your day. I can't wait to talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.